one of the things I have been wanting to do every single fall since I moved into this cute little house on the river was to plant some bulbs for the spring. And every single fall I would completely forget until it was way too late. And so this fall I finally remembered, and I had gone to Home Depot to buy something completely different, and I saw their huge bulb section, and that reminded me. And so I went ahead and bought a bunch of bulbs in that moment. And here I'm planting some ranunculus, and I've never planted ranunculus before, so I'm hoping they will do okay. I'm really excited to see how they do in the spring and how they look when they come up. And then also around the base of my plum trees, I planted a bunch of crocuses. And so I think those will look really cute coming up around the plum trees in the spring. I also bought some hyacinth bulbs, and instead of planting them into the ground, I decided to go ahead and plant them in pots. And they need at least to be buried at least 6 inches, and the soil here is not that great and it's pretty compact. And so I really wanted to make sure that they were able to get that 6 inches. And I also had a bunch of potting mix left over from the spring, so I decided to go ahead and experiment. I've never planted bulbs in pots before, so I'm hoping this works. I've heard it does, and so we're going to see how this goes. I think it'll be fun too that I can put these out on the back deck, and these will kind of be the first flowers decorating the back deck in the spring. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping those do good. And then I went around and just watered everything and gave it all a good soak, and hopefully everything will be really well established, and I guess we'll just wait and see what happens in the spring. So we've been having amazing weather. This was a couple days before the first day of fall, and the first day of fall, this last Sunday, we decided to go ahead and after church we took off and went up to Priest Lake and went on a hike, and then went out to dinner afterwards. And usually I like to make a pot roast in the slow cooker on Sundays. It just makes for, it's a really simple meal. I don't have to do much. You just start it in the morning before church and you have dinner ready that evening. And so since we ended up going on a hike on Sunday and eating out, I decided to go ahead and make the pot roast on Monday. And so I usually do a really simple pot roast with tomato sauce, like a can of tomato sauce and some onions and carrots and things like that. And this time I had a packet of some carnitas seasoning, and it's the Siete brand. And so I wanted to give that a try and see how that would taste. And so all you do is you just put the pot roast into the slow cooker. You can see I'm using my Instant Pot. I love the Instant Pot because you can also slow cook with it. And so if you have limited space available like I do, it really is helpful when you have a kitchen gadget that does multiple things. And so I love having the Instant Pot that pressure cooks and does slow cooking and all of the great things that Instant Pots do. So anyway, I put the pot roast in there, and then I put in the seasoning along with some water, and then just put that on low on the slow cook setting for 8 hours. And I don't have any video of the finished product, but I can tell you it was absolutely delicious. So really simple meal. Plus, when there's leftovers, it's great for the next day. Really recommend doing a pot roast at least once a week in the slow cooker. It's just a lovely, convenient meal to have. So here you can see I'm doing some cleanup, and I'm washing my cast iron. And usually I like to have the dishes done Sunday night before Monday morning. But here, because we had been gone all day, the dishes didn't get done. So I am actually doing the dishes, Sunday night's dishes, on Monday morning. And I'm getting ready to make the first batch of sourdough. And I had not made a batch of sourdough in quite a few months because we have been doing low carb, is you might have heard me mention in previous videos. And so I had just kind of put my sourdough starter aside and kept it stored in the fridge. And I finally kind of got it, I pulled it out about a week ago and started feeding it and got it nice and back to life. And decided I wanted to make some sourdough on, I guess it would be the second day of fall. And so I decided to experiment and do mainly whole wheat flour. And so I did just like 200 grams of all-purpose flour and 800 grams of whole wheat flour, when the recipe that I usually use flip-flops that. So it's usually 200 grams of whole wheat flour and 800 grams of all-purpose. But I wanted this to be, I guess you could say, a little bit more healthy. It's obviously not low carb, but I wanted kind of a really hearty sourdough. And so I used, it's organic, non-GMO, King Arthur whole wheat flour. And what I had read is usually when you use mainly whole wheat, you're not going to get as high of a rise. You'll have a little bit more of a denser loaf. And so here at the end, you'll kind of see the finished product. But anyway, I decided to experiment. And so here I'm mixing in the water and the salt. And I've had people comment before and be like, that's weird. Like, why do you mix the salt in that way? And honestly, I don't know. That is just the way that I learned. And that is how I've been doing it ever since I learned how to do sourdough. And it works just fine. And so I've not changed it, and I haven't tried anything different. Maybe someday I will, but honestly, I like to keep things pretty simple. And so if it works, that's just how I do it. And so then, of course, I did a series of stretch and folds. So about every 20-30 minutes, I would do a stretch and fold, and I did that 4 times. And I could already tell that the dough was a lot tighter starting off than when I was just using mainly all-purpose flour. And so here in the evening, after the dough had risen quite a bit, so it had more than doubled in size, I separated it out into 3 loaves, and right before bed. So you can tell the lighting's probably a little different because it was darker, but I separated it out into 3 loaves. And this is something I've never really learned how to, shape the loaves. I have just kind of always winged it. So I don't know. That's just my little method, and it works. So I'm sure there are some people who have a really fancy, method of shaping their sourdough, but yeah, I keep things very simple. And so I also just take a tea towel and put that into a bowl. I just use my Pyrex bowls, and that's what I put the dough in for the overnight fermentation, and I put them into the fridge. So these will go in the fridge, and for about, it usually ends up being about 12 hours before I bake them. I do this really simple. I just take plastic wrap, and then I take another piece of plastic wrap and tie it off. This was just the way I started making sourdough, and I just continued that way. I know I've seen people use like shower caps to cover the sourdough with, but yeah, anyways, this is just my little method. And so here I am the next day, and I'm putting the dough out onto some parchment paper, which is very important. You need the parchment paper. And then I dust the top of the loaf with some flour. And then I'm going to cut, or score the bread with a razor blade. And people can get really fancy with the scoring. I have tried a lot of different patterns. It is so much fun. And this time I decided just to keep it pretty basic and simple. And the scoring while it's beautiful, it also has a very practical function in that it helps the bread to release steam. And so instead of the bread exploding, it helps that to release the steam, and then it just keeps the loaf very pretty. And so here I am scoring it, and at this time I have my cast iron Dutch oven in the oven, preheating with the oven at 475 degrees. And so I pull it out, it's very hot. And then I put the sourdough into the scorching hot Dutch oven and put the lid back on and put it back in the oven at 475 for about 20 minutes. And then I took the lid off and lowered the oven temp to 450 degrees for about 15 minutes. And now this is not a full-blown tutorial on how I do my sourdough. It's not the recipe or the full steps. I do plan on doing that, so don't worry. Those of you who are going to message me and be like, can I have the recipe? Can I have the methods? Don't worry, it's coming, I promise. I'm actually working on revamping my blog. And so I have moved my blog to a new web host, transferred the domain, got a completely revamped template. And so I'm still working on it though. So there's no posts up just yet, but there will be. And I'm going to post recipes and homemaking posts and gardening posts, and I'm very excited. I have a lot of plans for my blog. And so I will link the blog down below. It's just homespunannie.com. You might click on it and go there, and there's no posts yet, but I promise there will be soon. Like I said, I'm working really hard to start posting over there. So I'm very excited about that. And I will also, I'll make a YouTube video going through the exact recipe and steps that I use for making sourdough. And so here, this loaf was a little bit bigger than the last one, so I had to adjust the time just a little bit, which is something you kind of have to do at times. And so here you could see the loaf just didn't rise as much as I'm used to it rising when I'm using mainly all-purpose flour. And so that was definitely a bit of a difference. And that's, everything I read said that would probably be the case. But that was okay because honestly, when we tasted the bread, it was so good. And that might have been the fact that we have been eating low carb for the last several months and we haven't had any sourdough for quite a while, but it was delicious. I loved, both my husband and I and my son, we loved the taste of the whole wheat, and it was so hearty and so satisfying. And so, yeah, even though it didn't rise as much, it was still absolutely delicious. So I'm excited to keep playing around with my sourdough recipe. But I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you're enjoying these first couple weeks of fall and just savoring every last drop of it. And as I said, my new blog is coming. I will have it linked below. I also have an Etsy shop. If you guys want to go check that out, I will have that linked below as well. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give it a like and share with somebody else you think would enjoy it. And I will talk to you guys in the next video.